On Exploration 3-2b, problem number 1 asks you to sketch 2 cycles of a sinusoid that you're given as an equation. The equation is y equals -3 plus 5 sine 4 times theta minus 20. So the first thing you want to do is take a look at the equation and figure out what is the vertical translation, or what is the midline. The vertical translation will tell you what the midline is. And the vertical translation is -3. So you can go ahead and draw a line where the midline is at -3, straight across. And the next thing you want to do is find the amplitude. The amplitude is the coefficient of the sine function, the number that's multiplying it outside of the function, and that's 5. That means the graph is going to have a maximum and a minimum that are 5 spaces up and 5 spaces below the midline, respectively. So now that you have the midline and you have the upper and lower bound, you need the period. In order to find the period, you take the coefficient that is inside the sine function. That's the number 4 in this case. You take the reciprocal of that and you multiply it by 360 degrees. If we were working in radians, you'd multiply it by 2 pi, but we're not. So we'll multiply it by 360 degrees and get 90 degrees. It will be 1/4 the size of the parent function because the parent function has a period of 360 degrees. So that's how all those numbers fit together. So you'll notice there are no numbers on the x-axis. We're going to have to put them there. So the first thing we can do here is to create a space where we have 90 degrees, right? That's one period. And then another space where we have 90 more degrees. We have 180 degrees. Now, the next thing we're going to have to do is find the horizontal translation, which is called the phase shift. And in this case, that's the number that's being added to or subtracted from theta. And you have to remember, again, just like the 4, we had to take the reciprocal. Here, whatever that number is, in this case, it's theta minus 20, we're going to have to take the opposite of that number. And in this case, it will be a phase shift of 20. The next thing we have to do is actually shift everything. We're going to shift everything to the right, 20 degrees, including our 2 90-degree spans. The 90-degree end point of the first arrow becomes 110 degrees. And the 180 end point of the second arrow becomes 200 degrees. Just slid it 20 degrees to the right. Now we're going to have to add a little bit more in the way of markings here, and we should be able to do just halfway through the period. And I'll show you why in a moment. But if we just find the halfway point, and here that's 65 degrees and 155 degrees, because half of 90 is 45. So if we add 45 to 20, we get 65. If we add 45 to 110, we get 155. So those are the center points, the midpoints of the 2 different periods. Now here's why we're going to do that. We know that by the midpoint, the graph of the sine curve has gone up to the top and back down to the midline. And then we know that in the second half, it's going to go down to the bottom and back up to the midline. And now we have one cycle of the sinusoid. All we have to do now is copy it again the next cycle. And now we have 2 cycles. Now you might think this is the time we can stop and and go on to the next problem. But it's not really, because if you look to your left, that curve doesn't go all the way to the y-axis. We've got to finish this up. And the way to do that is just to take the same curve that you've been using and fill it in there. And that's it.